Right, Mike Carlson is with us to talk NFL. Mike, good morning to you. How are you?
Good morning, Ger. I'm fine. How are you?
Yeah, good. So the people will remember last season that the Buffalo Bills and the Kansas City Chiefs played out one of the highest scoring, and if you like scoring and high quality offensive play, one of the greatest games of all time. The revenge match was last night, and the Buffalo Bills got a measure of revenge for what happened last year. Are they now the greatest show on turf at the moment?
I don't think you can really put it that way. I'm not sure there is a greatest show on turf. You go back to Thursday night, include that. Here's the halftime scores: 3-3, 10-3, 10-7, 10-9, 10-6, 14-13, 9-3, 10-7, 10-10, 21-14, 20-14. There isn't a lot of great show on turf going on this season, to be honest. And if you remember last year too, in the match last year that was basically the same as this one in week 5, Buffalo won that in Kansas City too. So they kind of proved that. I think what we're seeing is that Buffalo is probably the best balanced team in the league, which is something you said last year as well. And they managed to contrive to lose that playoff game that you were talking about to the Chiefs. And the Chiefs, even without Tyreek Hill, are still very explosive, but they're not the most explosive team. They're finding ways now to replace Hill. Marquez Valdez-Scantling had a long catch, which was important, and Juju Smith-Schuster, or J2, S2, made some plays for them as well. But basically, Buffalo is so well balanced and so hard to beat if you're depending on explosive plays. And this is kind of the story of the league this year. Everybody's been talking about two deep coverage. In other words, two safeties who play relatively deep, keep everything in front of them. And what they don't talk about is that there are very few quarterbacks who can consistently beat that kind of coverage, because the way to beat it is you have to work up the field gradually. They're going to give you the underneath. They're just not going to let you have the over-the-top big chunk play. So you have to be able to consistently move the ball forward. And there aren't that many good quarterbacks in the league right now who can do that. There's probably 4 great quarterbacks in the league right now, because the 2 greats who are still playing, Brady and Rodgers, are looking very ordinary these days.
Well, let's talk about Tom Brady, right? So it was an interesting week. Took the day off midweek to go to a wedding. It was Robert Kraft's wedding, so you might say he kind of probably has to show up, right? There's like
if it was Dan Snyder's wedding, no way.
Yeah, but then the footage has gone viral of him absolutely screaming at the offensive line. Now I think I'm actually watching Man in the Arena for my sins. It's I'm not sure I'm allowed to use the words to describe it, but it's it's a self-made, self-publicising thing, and he's got great guests and great footage, and it's definitely, if you're into your self-help in the Tom Brady cult, it's really worth watching. Great stories, but he screams at everybody all the time. That's his shtick. It's just that it's gone viral this week. I did feel if there was just a little bit of, Tom is like got a lot going on in his life at the moment, didn't show up for training midweek, and then the lads in front of him who were supposed to protect him, they're not doing great, and they must be looking at him going, look mate, where were you?
I wouldn't be surprised if there was an element of that. Of course, you cut Brady a lot of slack because he's won 7 Super Bowls, and and he is at that grumpy old man age as well. But what you have to ask yourself is Tom not making the mistakes, and it's all our fault, or are we all making mistakes, and we've got to put this all together? I think if you're a lineman, and in fairness, he's got to have time right now. And they just don't seem to be able to generate enough offense consistently to put teams away early. And their defense, while it's very good, isn't right now the kind of defense that's putting pressure on teams and forcing them to make mistakes. The idea that they could, I'm not surprised they only got 18 against Pittsburgh. There's a couple of mistakes. They would have got more. I was actually surprised that they gave up 20 to Pittsburgh. And I think, in my mind, that's where the game was lost. I'd be very curious to see what happened if he did show up and practice on Wednesday with teams, because we were talking about this when Thompson got the start for Miami, even though Teddy Bridgewater was cleared in concussion protocol, and actually later on Tua was cleared as well. But the idea with Teddy, at least, was that the guy who's practiced in the week is the guy who's prepared for the game. And, and obviously everyone would say, well, that doesn't apply to Brady because he doesn't need so much time. But I think maybe physically you just need to be out there, and getting in the rhythm and getting the timing right with everybody.
Yeah, and plus he's 45. Like, I don't know what our expectations are. It's been a freak that he managed to still be really good last season, the year after he won the Super Bowl. The fact that he might still be really good as well at 45 would be... it doesn't make any sense. And what would make sense is that this is the end. What might also make sense is this might be the end of Aaron Rodgers too. His form.
Yeah, what's his excuse? He's only like 41.
The ayahuasca didn't work.
That's the third game in a row where Rodgers has not looked great. In London being the second one. They won the game against the Patriots, which they were really lucky to win against a team that was playing a rookie third-string quarterback against them. But Matt LaFleur, I think, has been out-coached 3 weeks in a row. And the same thing happened to an extent that happened in London when they went down, and you need to come out and you need to sort of reestablish yourself or not necessarily down, but the other team got back in the game. You need to eat some clock, give your defense a rest. They come out and Rodgers kind of throws these desultory long passes. And in this game, he missed twice. He underthrew and then he overthrew Romeo Doubs. And both times Doubs was in a position to be able to make a play if the ball was on the money. And, I say desultory deliberately because it really looks like he's kind of going through motions, as it were. And we know that, as much turmoil as Tom Brady's had, Rodgers has had almost as much one way or another, relieved. Brady can't go home to Giselle. Rodgers can go to Pat McAfee on Mondays and blow off his excess tension. But I'm not sure that that's the best thing.
Well, he needs somebody to tell him to cop himself on. We'll obviously talk about the New York teams as the season goes on because they're incredible stories. Even early on in the season, the knives were getting sharpened for Robert Saleh, and all of a sudden, they're meaningful contenders. But meanwhile, like slowly but surely, kind of like the Terminator and Terminator 2, Bill Belichick is, even though he keeps getting like bullet in the head, he keeps building this team who, absolutely blew the Browns out of it in a game that really should have suited the Browns. The third string rookie quarterback, it's like, no big deal. Yeah, we'll stick up 29. No, actually 30-something points. And the injured wide receiver that hasn't played a game comes out of nowhere, touches the ball 4 times, scores 2 touchdowns. You're like, all right. So maybe Bill Belichick will have the last laugh after all.
Yeah, I still kind of wish that their offense was a bit more imaginative, but they did come up and make a few plays this time instead of being incredibly predictable. But it's typical. They're not the only team that is run-oriented and defense-oriented in the league right now, as opposed to kind of big play-oriented. And it's kind of old school football, but it also works against teams who are stuck in kind of too high zone defenses. Now, he's he outcoached Matt LaFleur and lost. He's outcoached 2 coaches in a row now, and Detroit and Cleveland. But these are not great teams that the Patriots are beating, and they keep making mistakes which good teams would pounce on. And they don't have to be great teams, just good teams. You think of the first week of the season where they lost to Miami and they made a couple of mistakes, and otherwise they probably could have won that game. But it really is, incredible to see how when you're doing the basics right, you can come up with these wins. Yeah. And I was naming all the games because there were so many games that were like reunion games. Belichick, of course, coached in Cleveland at the start of his career. The other quarterback, Jacoby Brissett, was a Patriots quarterback. So, I was wondering if some one of the stats gurus had a stat for, what was Bill Belichick's record coming back to teams he used to coach against quarterbacks he drafted.
Yeah, I bet you it's like there's a 0 at the end of it. Mike, we're out of time. Great to have you with us again. Thanks a million. Cheers.
Okay, thanks, Ger.
It's Mike Carlson there giving us a look back at the week.